Welcome back to the number one rake show, where we continue our Fox Sports 2022 USFL Coaching Series with Philadelphia Stars head coach Bart Andrus. And we get into his background coaching on the 1984 BYU National Championship team as a grad assistant, how he flipped a losing program into a winning one at the NAIA level, his connection to Coach Jeff Fisher, Michigan Panthers head coach, and why he is looking forward to playing the Michigan Panthers later on this season. All right, let's go talk to Coach Andrus. I am thrilled to welcome Philadelphia Stars head coach Bart Andrus to continue our Fox Sports 2022 coaching series for the USFL. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good, sir. I'm fired up to talk with you. But off the top, I just want to ask this question that I've been asking to many of the coaches. After coaching NAIA and in the NFL, the Toronto Argonauts, Tennessee Titans, Amsterdam Admirals, which we'll get into here in a little bit, and of course the Spring League with the Generals, 40 years as a coach, why did you want this opportunity to be a head coach in the USFL?
Well, first of all, I think that this is going to be really a good league. And second of all, I love coaching this type of player. These guys are still hungry. They're still adding to their resume. They're still chasing a carrot out there. And it's just a great temperament of a player. And it's something that I've just really enjoyed it. And I keep coming back to these type of alternative pro football leagues. And this one is, I've never seen it done as well as this.
I think you guys are off to a roaring start, quite honestly. I mean, when you look at the talent among the 8 coaches and then the talent that each of you were able to draft in those 45 rounds, of course, day 1, day 2, and the 10-round supplemental, I'm excited to see what you guys are doing. But I was told to ask this as you were head coach to Amsterdam Admirals. Was Troy Aikman the first person to call your game as a professional head coach?
Yeah, my first game as a professional head coach, it was in 2001. It was at the Rhine Fire, which is in Dusseldorf, Germany. And it was also Troy's first game as a commentator. In I guess back in the old days there, like we call them the old days, Fox would let the new analysts cut their teeth in NFL Europe. And, Troy was just like right off the bat was phenomenal at what he did. But his first game as a broadcaster in NFL Europe was my first game as a head coach.
How did that feel for you?
Well, I didn't really think of it at that time. And then later on, I ran into him, somewhere, and we talked about that. And it was just a really interesting dynamic. And I remember the game. It was the opening game of the season. We ended up driving the ball at the end of the game, and we didn't convert on that drive, and we ended up losing the game. So my first game as a head coach was a loss. And it was like, that kind of sticks with you. It's kind of, you go home and you think, wow, am I cut out to do this? And you start reevaluating. And, fortunately for Troy, I think that his first game as a broadcaster probably went a lot better than my first game as a head coach. So, his career took off after that, his second career, I should say, because, that was his move into broadcasting.
I was going to say, that's not the first time or the last time that you would interact with one of the better quarterbacks to, I think, ever play football. And to that end, I want to read back to you a quote you gave to the Sporting News about your number 3 overall pick in this USFL draft, Bryan Scott. You said this: I had Steve McNair through Super Bowl 34. As a head coach in NFL Europe, I had Danny Werfel and Sean Hill. In the UFL, I had Troy Smith and Eric Crouch on the same team. Both won the Heisman Trophy. Bryan is in that class as far as his talent. My question to you is, do you stick to that?
Absolutely. This guy is going to open a lot of eyes when he takes the field in a few weeks. I'm excited for Bryan, and he doesn't really. It's not the kind of thing where he plays with a chip on his shoulder. He plays to prove everybody that believes in him right, and I think that partly as he came up in college football, he was at a Division III school, and right away people make assumptions. And I kept looking at him, as a quarterback in terms of talent, and I'm going, what is everybody missing here? I can see that he has the talent, the ability, all the things that I'm looking for in a quarterback. He has, and this is going to be a great stage for him to show everybody exactly, what he's about. And he has a quick arm. He anticipates. He reads coverage well. It's just one of those things that you have to see it to believe it. When I had him in the fall version of the spring league in 20, we won every game. I have never gone into a game. I had him a couple times in the spring league, but that was when in 2020, the fall of 2020, we had like real games. And I mean, never lost a game as a coach that Bryan Scott started for me. So, I mean, that's something that kind of sticks with you, along the way.
Coach, to echo that sentiment, I got to know Bryan over the course of those 2 days at the USFL draft. I'll add here that he was the only player to stay for both days of the draft, helping you in that process. How invaluable was it for you to have him in the room with you as you were going down the list of guys that he's probably going to be throwing the ball to, and guys that are probably going to be blocking for him, and guys that he has played against and said, no, I don't want no part of him. Put him on our team.
Well, I think with Bryan, he wants to be totally involved. He wasn't in the draft room to make decisions. He wasn't, hanging around because, he was putting his 2 cents in. He wanted to be part of the whole experience. And yeah, I mean, there's certain guys that he's worked out with, that he's played with in the past. And if we had the availability to draft some of those guys and we felt the same way he felt about them, yeah, we drafted them. And I always go into a game with a certain, you go in with a game plan, and I always tell the quarterbacks before the game, I say, look, is there anything on this call sheet that you don't like? It's the last thing I want to do is call a play they don't like. Well, same thing with players. Are there any of these guys in the draft that you absolutely have a feeling about in a negative way? Because I don't want to draft players that aren't going to get along, that aren't going to play together well. And yeah, I ran some names by him, and he was very good to say, look, coach, I don't know much about this guy. I really do know about this guy. And, he was very honest with us in that kind of a thing. And because he realizes that, so go the fortune of those players, so go the fortune of him, so I think it was really nice to have him there. He wanted to be there. He wanted to hang around. He wanted to be in the room. He sat with us at the desk the first night until the end. So I like a guy that wants to be involved like that.
My last bit on Bryan Scott, Coach, I was able to speak with a coach who worked with you and former NFL offensive coordinator himself, and Steve Fairchild. I asked him, hey, realistically, what is going on? Why isn't this guy in the NFL? And he says, you asked me that 2 years ago. I don't know what to tell you, RJ. Like, I'm really trying to figure out myself why he hasn't got more looks. And to that end, I penciled the Philadelphia Stars in as a team I expect to be very good coming out of the gate because you two have such a rapport. But then Coach Fisher, head coach of the Michigan Panthers, Jeff Fisher, gave me this to add. He said, next time you see Bryan Scott, can you just break his finger for me? Just so we don't have to deal with him. And I wonder, first, what do you say to that as a as a rival head coach who thinks that highly of your quarterback, and also a little bit about your relationship with Coach Fisher.
Okay, well, first of all, I think that Jeff had an opportunity to look at some video of Bryan playing. I think that at one time he, being in the LA area, Jeff was the head coach of the Rams. They knew about Bryan. I think that they probably looked at him, maybe considered him in a late round or maybe as a free agent at one time. So I think that part of it, he sees the type of player that Bryan is, and yeah, I mean, any opposing coach would not want Bryan Scott to line up against him. So I can see, how it tongue in cheek Jeff would say that he maybe he'll lose a finger or something like that. He'll sprain a finger or something like that before the game. So I think that's going to play out. I think that you're right. I think Bryan will get off to a quick start. He understands. He's played in our offense before. He understands it. He can not only for himself, but relate to the other players. Hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what I expect when you're running a route, and I'm going to put the ball here or there or whatever. And now with Jeff, we go back quite a ways. We go back we met when we were 11 years old. So Jeff is a guy that is really responsible for giving me the opportunity to coach in the National Football League. And he did it in a way that really helped me come along and develop as a pro coach. I owe a great deal of gratitude towards Jeff for giving me that opportunity. Because I mean, without our friendship and him making that decision, I probably am another 10 years out from getting into the NFL and coaching professionally. So that was a great opportunity for me. And then not only that, but he's one of a handful of guys that I've either worked under, worked for, or worked with. That I've taken a lot from in terms of developing my coaching style, and so I owe Coach Fisher quite a bit. Yeah.
Well, not too many other coaches get to say they played Pop Warner, let alone quarterback Jeff Fisher's Pop Warner team, and that would be you, Coach. I want to move on to a bit about you, quite honestly.
Okay.
In doing my research for this conversation we're going to have, I found that you were a grad assistant on the 1984 BYU Consensus National Championship team. Of course, that team is quarterbacked by Steve Young, head coach by Lavelle Edwards, who is one of the great coaches in our sport. But what did you take away from that experience and that 13-0 season? Yeah, still got that national title ring? Did you get one?
Yeah, I did. I still have it. I've got a couple rings, but I don't wear them. They're so bulky, but, well, first of all, and I don't want to correct you or anything, but
I'm sorry,
but the national championship year was Robbie Bosco was the quarterback.
Thank you.
Steve Young had just graduated, and, Bosco filled a big void. Let me tell you something, I watched the video from before, the year before, and I'm like, wow, this guy, Steve Young, unbelievable. But yeah, so I was a head high school coach in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I decided that I wanted to make a move into college football. I had been out of college myself for 3 years, and so I looked at 3 different schools. I wanted to learn the passing game. And at that time, the colleges that were throwing it around the yard pretty well were the University of Miami, BYU, and Stanford. And unfortunately, I couldn't get accepted into Stanford's graduate program. And I wasn't the smartest guy, but I had a B average, and they wanted more. So it came down to, well, do I want to go all the way to the East Coast, to Miami, or and I got accepted at BYU also. And it was probably really one of those things again where it by going to BYU, not only did I learn a great passing system, I got to work for Lavelle Edwards, he's like one of my top 10 favorite coaches of all time. And I got to learn their passing game. But at the same time, the guy calling the plays was Norm Chow. The quarterback coach that I got to kind of school under was Mike Holmgren. So it was like the perfect situation. And then we went 13-0 and won the national championship. And I said, boy, this college coaching isn't that hard, but little did I know that, there would be many years beyond that I was going, yeah, maybe that was very fortunate that I got to go in, and such a talented team, such a talented coaching staff. And I got to learn from those guys. And that was the best part of the education in getting my master's degree there, was the football part of it and getting that education on the side.
Well, let me again apologize to Robbie Bosco, who would probably have my hide for doing that. And thank you for helping me out there, Coach. I would add in here on that team is now Syracuse offensive coordinator Robert Nye, college football analyst Trevor Maddich. I mean, and you mentioned Coach Holmgren and Coach Chow. Those are outstanding coaches and titans in our game. But to your point about learning how difficult it can be to be a head football coach, I'll direct everybody's attention to Rocky Mountain State College, hadn't won a game in 4 years when you became a head coach there, and you flipped the program into one that was winning 6-4. You are awarded the NAIA Coach of the Year award. What did you do to flip them around?
Well, that was an interesting situation. I got offered that job, and it was like they hadn't won a game in 4 years, and I'm like, well, geez, if I could win a game, that would be I would be big time there, Well, we went in, we recruited a quarterback. They had a pretty good nucleus of players there, even though I had seniors that had never won a game in college, in their college career. So, but they had a good nucleus. I went out and recruited the quarterback and a left tackle. Fortunately, I had a couple of receivers that were already there that we just needed to kind of tap into their skill set. One was a guy named Chris Horn, who later played a little bit for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they actually allocated him to Amsterdam for me in NFL Europe. So I got to coach him later on down the road as a pro. But what we did is we went in, we put in a high-speed, no-huddle offense, which at that time, 1996, wasn't real common. And we spread the field and threw the ball. And we put it upon ourselves just to go in and outscore people. And we opened up the season with Black Hills State that year. And you're talking about a team that hadn't won a game in 4 years. We won the game, and we won it 70-8. So, and before the game, I was in the locker room, and I don't know what came over me, but I told this team that I said, look, guys, if you guys win this game, I'm going to get you on Sports Center. And then I walked out of the locker room, and I go, why did I say that? And so after the game, they were going, hey, you're going to get us on. And I called ESPN, and I said, like, hey, I've got a story here about a college that hadn't won a game in 4 years, and they won today. And they said, oh, where? And I said, Rocky Mountain College. And I go, oh, okay. And I could tell I was getting the brush off, And I said, but they did it, and they won 70-8. And they said, hold on. And so they got us on that segment called Did You Know? I don't know if you remember that on ESPN Sports Center. And the kids got on there. We had highlights from the local NBC station. They sent them over to Bristol. They put us on. And the title of the segment was, Did You Know There Was a Rocky Mountain College? And did you know they hadn't won a game in 4 years? Did you know they won 70-8, in their first game? so it was really good. The kids got on, and from there out, we, that could have been enough for the season, but we ended up with a winning record, and the guys did a great job, and the quarterback played well. Ended up leading the nation in total offense and passing and scoring. So it was just a fun year. And then that was my only year there. And I that's when Coach Jeff Fisher came in and asked if I would like to come work for him with the Houston Oilers, and I did, and made the move to Tennessee with him. So,
no, Coach, that is an outstanding story. I did not know this part about getting your team on television. It reminds me of what Mike Leach was doing at Iowa Wesleyan, calling up folks to let them know what he and Coach Mummy were able to accomplish. And one of the things that struck me, and quite honestly struck Coach Fisher, is how used to this sort of a league you are. It's one with a tight, close-knit staff. It's one where you got to make every pick count. You're dealing with a 45-man roster as opposed to 53, for instance, in the NFL, or even 85 for some of the college coaches that are making the jump. Do you feel you have an edge on the other 7 coaches in the league?
Well, I don't know about having an edge. There's some good coaches in this league, but it may be foreign to them, working with such a small staff, shorter period of time to get everything done, to get it on the field, to go through a draft, select players. Now I'm used to that, and I'm used to the smaller staff. So if to me, it's just normal. To them, that was the first thing that when we went to the Fox Studios in January to meet as in our head coaching seminar, and I rode over to the studio that day with Kevin Sumlin, and the first thing he said to me, he goes, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. He says, you're an old hat at this, He goes, I looked up your background. He goes, you're pretty comfortable, huh? And I go, well, yeah, I haven't known anything else for the last, 15 to 20 years. So yeah, I'm okay with this. And so he was picking my brain right away. And, as we would make our trip over and back each day. And it is something that seems natural to me. And I can see the concern that they would have, not having that experience. They're used to bigger staffs. They're used to more time, all that. Now, does that give us an advantage? I don't know. It all comes down to really to players in at any level, any league, anywhere. It's how you can get your players to play together and play for each other, and everything else to me in these kind of pro football leagues is pretty even. It's pretty similar. Even in the NFL, it's pretty even. Nobody has a higher cap number than anybody else, so it's how can you get these guys to play together and play hard, each week. And so that's something that I love to do, and I love that challenge. So I think these guys, the other 7, coaches, I think they're going to be just fine. They're going to find that, hey, boy, we really have some redundancy before, and having 4 coaches in one position, so I think they're going to come away from it really enjoying the experience, especially with how hungry players are at this level.
I'm excited to see what you guys do. I mean, about 30 days of training camp, and then you're off and running for a 10-week regular season beginning April 16th on Fox, for those of y'all that are interested. Coach, I have 3 questions I want to ask you that I've asked all the coaches. We're not singling you out here. And the first one is, who is the best offensive player in the league that you saw from the draft, apart from any guy that is a Philadelphia Star?
Well, I'm not sure it's maybe the best offensive player, but it's one that I'm interested to see play, and that would be Paxton Lynch. I'm really curious to see how he steps up and responds playing in the USFL.
On the defensive side, is there a guy like Paxton Lynch that piques your interest?
Not at that kind of a level, but and I'd be hard pressed to name somebody. There's so many names that kind of went through that draft, draft portal that we just went through. Really, I really can't come up with one there on that.
Oh, that's all right, Coach. The last one I had for you is the best team in the league, apart from your Philadelphia Stars. Who do you think put together a really outstanding roster, top to bottom?
Boy, I couldn't single out any one, but I think that they all did a really great job of evaluating. There were more instances than I thought there would be where we had a guy in mind, especially during the positional draft, the first 2 days, where we were set to take someone, and then somebody right before we took that player. And, so I have a lot of respect for the job that the other 7 teams did in evaluating. When you're kind of on the same players, that to me tells you that they're all looking at the right things. And as far as rivalry, I'm looking forward, first of all, to who we play first. So right now I'm looking at the New Orleans Breakers, and I'm excited to get ready to play them. That's the next most important game to us. And then down the road, playing against Jeff Fisher's team and the Michigan Panthers, that's going to be fun because it'll be for the first time in my career and his career since high school where we went against each other. We played at separate, different high schools in the LA, San Fernando Valley area. And we always played each other every year, not in the same conference, but we always had a game against each other. And so this is the first time that I've ever coached against him. And that's the first time he's ever coached against me. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And it'll be all in good humor too. It's not the kind of thing that, we happen to have a lot of respect, and we like each other a lot. So I'm looking forward to that little rivalry.
Coach, I have been floored by the crossover between these 8 coaches, including yourself, the respect that each of you has for the job that you have had or done before you got to the USFL. And I'm excited to see what your team does against Larry Fedora's New Orleans Breakers, because you guys are 2 offensive-minded coaches that are going to sling the ball around a little bit. And I'm excited about that. Philadelphia Stars coach Bart Andrus, thank you so much for joining us here on the number 1 ranked show to talk a little bit about the USFL and yourself.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching this video. And remember, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos on the number 1 ranked show YouTube channel.